So this is your technical difficulties warning. Apparently, Shady's camera didn't want to play along. Don't worry, it's not your upload time. It's my camera. But coming up on Worlds Asunder.
Because in my mind, where a lot of this starts and how it works is you pick what you want and then you build reasons to make that the reality. So if you want a fantasy world that has like magical creatures, you have magical creatures. If you want them to be in a stable, peaceful kingdom, you need to figure out, again, you don't need to go into all of the details, but you need to have a basic understanding. That means they have things under wraps in such a way that there is peace.
As storytellers, we want to capture the hearts, minds, and imaginations of our readers, mainly through our expertly crafted worlds.
Creating new worlds in any genre might seem like a daunting task, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel for every story.
Welcome, weary writers, to Worlds Asunder, a world-building and writer's life podcast.
My co-host is David Shadoin, better known as Shady. It's not just a descriptor, it's also his moniker.
And she's H.Y. Gregor, or you can call her Haley, your friendly post-apocalyptic wasteland elf.
Together, we've got enough published to fill a small shelf, but why should you listen to us? Because we called in some favors.
Every other week, we bring you the best and brightest to give you the tips and tricks on world building and character building like the pros. So, open up your ear holes.
Get out your pen and paper.
And get ready for us to tear Worlds Asunder. It's a throwback episode this week, so welcome Clark Rowenson once again for Do You Believe in Magic, Part 1. Enjoy! What's up, guys, and welcome back to Worlds Asunder, the only podcast on the internet teaching you how to world build while also having a little bit of fun without making you bored out of your mind. I don't know, don't look at me like that.
It's
I'm just making stuff up as I go sometimes.
Real low bar.
Hey, we're trying to be entertaining here, trying to make it good. This will be... Don't know when this episode is going to come out in order yet, so this is going to be fun for all of us. For those of you who are coming back, welcome back to the Worlds Asunder network of podcasts, and hopefully you've enjoyed the previous ones that you've watched so far. I would also hope so, since you are returning, and why would you do that to yourself if you aren't? For those of you who are new, you do not need to watch these in order. Every one of these is a different topic on purpose with different guests that we have met throughout our careers, so that way we can kind of share their wealth of knowledge with all of you new and kind of intermediate authors, and even some of you veterans out there who just want to hear maybe a different take on something or a different system. That being said, I'm your host, Shady David Shadoin, and my co-host, as always, is H.Y. Haley Gregor. Haley, who do we have on today?
Tonight we have Clark Rowenson, or C.R. Rowenson. He is, I'm trying to think, I think I've known you for two and a half years now?
3, I think.
Getting there. And Clark specializes in magic systems. So he's a writer, he does fiction as well, but one of his big things that he's super knowledgeable and really helpful about is everything to do with magic. He's got an awesome break. I know a lot of people talk about, expectations for magic systems, and he has broken it down so specifically in a way that gives you tons of freedom, but also answers all the questions that you would need. So we've got, I was just sharing this earlier with him that I've got my super sexy hardcover of this book, The Magic System Blueprint. He's got one other out. Restrictions may apply, building limits for your magic system, because we talk a lot about how magic needs costs. We'll go ahead and make sure that we throw all of Clark's stuff out later. He's got his website, crrowenson.com. He's got a Patreon. He also has a podcast. So he's the Magic Engineer on YouTube. YouTube podcast. YouTube channel. Okay. Mm-hmm. He's a YouTube channel, The Magic Engineer, which is full of a ton of stuff. And I think you're ramping that up again, right?
Slowly, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So lots of good stuff. We will go ahead and I do want to start this episode with kind of a reader or a listener disclaimer. I know that you say magic systems and you look at it and you go, oh, well, I write sci-fi or whatever. This doesn't apply to me. If you have made it this far and you write any kind of spec fic, at the beginning of the book, Clarke has the Arthur C. Clarke's third law, which is any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And so that's something that we're going to go ahead and hit a little bit later. This covers really a ton of different world systems and doesn't have to be specific to magic. So that's one of the things we're going to dig into.
Right. Actually, before, just real quick, because I have two basic definitions that can really broaden your perspective on what we're talking about. Because when I'm talking about magic, it's anything in our stories enabling effects or abilities beyond our current capability or understanding. So it's a broad net that does include fantasy magic and potions and superpowers and advanced tech and the Force and monsters and Lovecraft's like Cthulhu stuff. All of that are things that are just anywhere we have that step into the fantastical, that is magic. And then your magic system doesn't mean it's complicated. It is just the set of facts and information that make it understandable. So a magic system can be as simple as a button that is going to make the universe go boom. And that's all you need to know. And that's your magic system.
I'm here for that. That sounds easy to write. Sign me up.
That's called the Big Bang.
Mm-hmm. Doomsday.
Just don't push
or
that
Doomsday.
button. Big sign. Do not push.
Do not
push again.
Again, yeah. Oh, that's the reset button. Just reset universe.
Oops.
Entropy's gone too far. We got to bring it back.
So really quickly as an intro, I can talk about, your website and some of the stuff that you've done, but I realized that I have never actually asked you this question. So I was wondering about your professional background other than writing things, because I know your website says something about chemistry and engineering, and I have no idea how you landed where you landed or whether past skills have related to this or how you got to this. So will you fill us in on your actual background a little more? Sure.
And if we want to talk about it more, I can. I will try and keep it brief so we can get to the useful stuff for other people. But yes, my background is actually I have 2 degrees, one in chemical engineering and one in chemistry. And I then ended up doing research for a couple of years into energetics and explosives, which was interesting, but at the end of the day, the cool factor did not outweigh the danger factor for me. So then I took a hard right turn into dealing with IT support and managing an IT team, and then moved into project management and web app managing developers. And my life became a living Office Space meme of I deal with the customers. I deal with the engineers so the customers don't have to, and I keep the customers from the engineers. So
you're Jan in the IT crowd, but better at your job.
Yeah. It's about the relationships.
Just realized Haley must have never seen Office Space.
I've seen Office Space. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
So that's my background, and it does come into play a lot. The engineering and the chemistry really affected how I thought about things and how I structured information and how I researched stuff. Mm-hmm. And without that, I don't know that I would have gotten as good as I am at being able to break things down and process things. And part of that was probably because that's what I had to do in order to study the material that was over my head a lot of the times. But in terms of how I got into fiction, it all began with a dream, kind of. Because, short version, I was hanging out with a bunch of friends, and we were doing the thing where you stay up late into the night, and we were talking about if everybody could have one superpower, what would it be? And if we had the Avatar, the elements from Avatar, which type of bender would we be? So naturally, that went on until 3 or 4 in the morning. And
As it does.
And that night I had my brain just combined that conversation with all of the STEM information I was learning, all the science stuff, mashed it together into one of the most comprehensive dreams I had, where suddenly we all woke up with superpowers that worked scientifically. And then I was explaining it to my friends about the powers they had and why it was cool and all the stuff that happened. And they were very patient until they got sick of it and said, Clark, just shut up. Write it down and we'll read it. So then I spent a bunch of time writing it down, like 100 pages worth, about all of the magic. And not even, no. Like that stuff hasn't seen the light of day.
Down the road.
So I wrote it up and gave it to them, and they didn't read it, except for my one friend who thought it was a real page-turner, but she reads academic articles for fun. So then I thought I was being clever, saying I'm going to put it in a fiction story, then they'll want this extra information. So got into writing fiction, met up with writing groups. Down the line, a couple years later, we were helping each other as we do, and the friends I was working with were just very encouraging and supportive, and pushed me in the direction of magic, because I was trying to find what my platform was, and they kept saying, you're really good at this, and you talk about this in a way that makes it understandable. Because one of the people in our group was a Christian fiction author, and after that, she's like, I want to work with you to figure out some fantasy stuff. So that's kind of how I ended up talking about magic systems. I can have a whole other talk about why I ended up diverging to focus on the nonfiction for a while. My fiction has been on pause for about 8 to 10 years. And I'm just now able to really pick it up again. So,
well, it's so hard because you can't do everything, right? Like, you get offers for new projects, and you've got to, at some point, you have to learn when to say no or when to say, later, or
right.
Making those decisions is not easy. But we will say you have now made the jump to full time.
Yes.
So congratulations on the leap. I think it's awesome. We didn't mention, so on Clark's website, he's got his blog and a bunch of stuff set up. He also does consultations. And so that obviously goes back to kind of how you started out. I guess your friend was saying that, like, hey, talk me through it. And you're a super personable, like, easy to talk to guy. And I'm sure that felt just really natural.
And I love helping people. That was a big part of the reason I focused on the nonfiction, is I realized at the end of the day, I just wanted to help make magic systems, and I wanted to see better magic systems and stories. I honestly didn't care if they were mine or not.
Mm-hmm.
So and there wasn't much information about magic systems. There still isn't. So it seemed like a good fit.
Yeah. And I know that before I met you and before I read your book, the only thing that I had really seen was Sanderson's Laws of Magic. And they're so short. And I know that you reference them. You've done a lot of breakdowns of the stuff that he recommends. But I think it's fascinating. And I will shamelessly plug Clark here. I talked to him for like 15 minutes, and he helped me turn a 3-book series into a 5-book series, and like rewrote all of book 2 for me, because he helped me figure out this huge implication that I hadn't even considered, and a whole new book was created in a very short amount of time. So he knows what he's talking about, and we'll let him get into some of that here.
And I do help people with more than just magic. Like Haley said, anything with writing that feels harder than it should be, I'm there to help. Except like marketing, business stuff, I'll talk to you about it, but I don't know. There's probably better people to coach you on that. But writing, story structure, that kind of thing, I'm down to help how I can.
And there will definitely be another podcast on Book Career in a Year that will also talk to marketing and stuff. So don't expect them to pop up here, other than if we're talking to them about other world building stuff. But
Nick Thacker knows our skills, and right now they're in this interviewing, bringing in people who know their stuff and giving that information to you guys.
So yeah. And I said this before we started recording, the problem with having me on to talk about magic or world building is that I can do it for hours. So the question is, like, where do you guys want to start?
So I think, at least for me, I think a lot of people, when we think about magic and you're writing a fantasy world, they think about, oh, this is my world and this is how everything works. And then they put the magic on top of it. And it's not necessarily an afterthought, but it's a layer, as opposed to like a foundation, if that's fair.
Or it's not integrated is really the biggest issue, is when it's not connected to the other parts of the story is where I feel most of the problems lie. Like, that's how I feel about the Heroes TV series. It felt like a character drama, which I'm not the biggest fan of character dramas, but it felt like a character drama where the powers kind of got painted on top. Most of the drama and stuff that came in there would have been exactly the same if we took the powers away. Like, they changed the situations a little bit, but it very easily, if you just de-escalated the stakes a tiny bit, a lot of the things would have been the same. Like, you had the cheerleader who was invincible. If you just made her somebody who was the thrill seeker and kind of wasn't afraid to die, a lot of the behaviors would have been the same.
That is a really interesting litmus test. Like, if you remove the magic or if you remove the powers, does the story still stand on its own? And I had never thought about it like that before.
It's one of those things, because we say that a lot about the different parts of our story, right? If you take it away, the story shouldn't be the same. That's not to say that you couldn't tell the same type of story. In my mind, it's all about impact and connection, because you want it to you want the different parts of your story to be influencing and supporting each other, like a solid building. The beams are connecting and sharing the load and making everything better, so that if you take it away, sure, the building might still be there, but it's gonna change how it feels and how it stands. That's how I like to think of it. It's making sure that it's supporting the other stuff.
So where do you recommend people start? That's a big question, maybe.
With magic in general, or with getting stuff connected in?
Yeah, to have a smooth integration. For me, when I think world building, my brain jumps to like your second world fantasy where you're like, oh, I need a map. And I know that that's not where everyone starts. But as far as like the things that people consider when they're starting to create a new world, whether it's, something that's urban fantasy or science fiction that takes place in a world that we're familiar with or not, you start looking at your geography, your culture, food and agriculture, like little things. What tips or tricks do you have for starting to make sure that if we want magic to be something that's really prevalent in a world, how do you connect it all together in a way that's meaningful?
So the biggest part of making your magic matter is finding the places where things intersect and where they bump into one another. So if you have if you have a character, I don't know, give me a current show or movie you guys watched that had some magic in it.
See, the thing I just watched was Fallout, and that was tech, right? Those are
okay. Yeah. So
yeah.
So I haven't seen the Fallout series yet, but I just booted up Fallout 4 again. In fact, Fallout 4
you and
VR.
half the world. Yeah.
So I have it set up in VR now, so that's going to be a good time. But with that, if you just look at one of the most quintessential things that gets overlooked so much is the Pip-Boy. That is a perfect example of the tech being built up to enable not just the characters, but the Pip-Boy is the key to immersion and in the game functioning as a game. Is the Pip-Boy it is the node, it is the connector point that allows us to interface with the type of information we need, which is part of why even as ridiculous as the inventory management and all that kind of stuff can get in any of the Bethesda games, it actually feels more immersive through Fallout than it does through Skyrim. Because you have this giant backpack that you can stuff an entire body into in both cases, but in Skyrim it's just a menu that pops up and you don't even have a backpack. Like with the Pip-Boy, there's like a mental interface through that. And they did a good job of that, where you aren't able to do certain things until you get your Pip-Boy at the end of Vault 111.
Really quick, for anyone who's not familiar with Fallout, will you give us the rundown of what that is and how it works?
Sure.
Because they kind of overlook it in the show. It's there, but it's kind of a catch-all, and it's not really integrated super well, now that I'm thinking about it.
I don't remember what it stands for. PIP is an acronym, but it is a computer that a lot of people wear on their arms. It's like a gauntlet that they wear. And then in the game, that's where you go in to manage game settings, look at your inventory, check your stats, do your level up. So it would be like having your phone strapped to your wrist with a bunch of biometric apps and your calendar and all of that. Basically what we do, just strapped on your forearm, and a lot of people have them.
Bigger screens than the watch. Do you guys want to take guesses at what it stands for? Because I have it, and we're all going to feel real dumb.
I'm pretty sure the first part is personal.
Yeah, I was going to say it's personal interface, not program.
I don't know.
I couldn't have told you. I've played one game a long, long time ago. I'm out of the loop. So it is the personal information processor. So,
processor.
Yeah.
Processor.
In the show, she uses it to check like the radioactive levels, and it's a map and a couple of other things, but they don't utilize it a ton. And maybe they'll do more moving forward because it is like prevalent throughout, but they're not really explained or dug into. So
yeah, and that's one piece of tech in the Fallout world. You also, the other main parts, especially in Fallout 4, you have the Institute that's creating the synths. You have all of the standard robots, and that's the bulk of it. You've got weapons, you've got power armor, you've got robots, and then you have the synths, which are synthetic humans. Basically, they can even make them look like specific people and replace them, which is fun stuff. So
that's a word for it, yeah.
There's if you look at that, there's just 6 parts of that magic system, depending on whether you count the individual guns and stuff like that. So it's a relatively simple magic system as far as it goes. But the way they deal with it, one, the Pip-Boy is sort of your interface into the gameplay and into the world. And then each of these pieces of tech in there are integrated into other characters and into the world building. I mentioned the Synths and the Institute. It's the place that built these creatures, so then you can start digging into their goals, why they're sending the synths out, how they were able to make the synths, what are the ramifications of them making the synths, and that's some of the stuff that gets explored in the game as you follow the main quest line. So this is I feel like I am just rambling and not actually answering your question.
This is awesome.
So to make it matter, you want to find it can be as simple as picking what you want it to connect to and then trying to figure out how the two molecules bump into each other. So, for example, if you have somebody who develops a power overnight, it honestly doesn't matter what the power is, and they have a goal. Let's keep it real simple. Their goal is to graduate high school, get out of their crap town, and get away from their abusive family home, right? And get freedom. That's their real goal, is freedom. So then you can start looking at a couple of things of we have this power. I've decided what it is. The way you start integrating it is looking at things on a level of how would the magic help them do that? How would the magic hurt them? How would it complicate them from getting to their goals? How would it shape who they are? And then all of a sudden it's connecting on a deeper and deeper level, which maybe Heroes did later on, but they lost me before I could really get too deep pot into it.
That's season 2. Season 2 lost a lot of people. It's coming back. They're doing a Heroes Reborn or Resurgence or something. I was reading. I don't know if it's a reboot or if it's a sequel, or I think it's pretty early pre-production. So we'll see. I will wait to be disappointed by it later, probably.
But
I want to hold my breath for that one.
Did that answer your question? That's really the base thing, I think, is just pick the parts you want to connect and start knocking around ideas of how one would impact the other.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that was something that when we were talking about prepping for the episode, you were talking about how, if there is a certain level of magic in the world, what kind of overall implications. Do you want to dig into that a little bit?
Yeah, because what I was talking about ties really well into that. If anybody has seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, when I'm talking with one of my friends and we talk about this, it always becomes that meme from the episode of it's all about the implication.
Whiteboard?
To the implication. And that's really what it is once you state something as true or as part of your magic system, it's exploring the implications of what you said. And then you tweaking the facts to make the implications be what you want. So, for example, you mentioned prevalence, which is one of the factors you can tweak in your story, and that's just how present is it throughout the world? Is it all over the place? Is it something you see occasionally? Is there only one person in the world who has this magic? How commonplace is it? So combining that with what the magical effects are, that can start changing things. So, for example, you have somebody who can, let's say they can think matter into existence. If it's only one person that can do that, the implications are going to be mostly limited to them and the things that they do. If a whole bunch of people can do that, then you have to start asking what that means and what are the implications of them being able to do that. If there is a guild of people that can think matter into existence, how does the world or a country maintain economic stability? Because can they just make money? If they can, how do you deal with that? And like this kind of stuff gets dealt, I think, in a very interesting way in the Imager portfolio by Elie Modisette. I've heard his name pronounced different ways.
I've heard it pronounced different ways too. I know who you're talking about, but I don't know how to say his name.
I thought it was Modisette, and then I've heard it like 3 different ways, so I don't know. But Elie Modisette, the Imager portfolio, that's exactly what they can do. And he explores the implications and reins them back in some fun ways. Because there, the prevalence isn't too high. It's high enough to cause a problem that if these imagers wanted to create money, they could, or they could create or process valuable materials and sell it and make a ton of money. So in order to maintain economic stability, the governments keep a pretty tight lid on them with the social and real threat of like, if you guys get out of hand, we have to squash you. Because you guys making it rich is like, we don't care about that as much as we want our government to continue to function. So
it's called inflation, guys. Come on.
Mm-hmm. I was going to make the exact same joke. We already know what the answer is. The implication is inflation. That's what money printing is. Anyway,
I think that's an awesome example though, because so many things that we talk, or when you see like fantasy and it's like, oh, the gods are connected to the magic or the religion is connected to the magic. But that is an amazing example of like reining it into other things, because you have to consider the economy and the government and like restrictions like that. And I think that's super cool.
And you don't have to explore everything. That's where World Builder's disease comes from, is we feel we have to explore and we have to build absolutely everything. And you can't, and you don't have to. Like, first off, you just straight up can't. But second, you just don't have to. You just need to build the stuff that is immediately relevant to your story. If your story doesn't have anything about governments or global powers or anything like that, you may not have to think through what happens with the economy. If it's a very personal tale of somebody trying to overcome drug addiction or somebody just trying to deal with a stalker, or I should have warned you guys, literally all of my themes are always dark. So, but if you're just looking at something more personal like that, or even just somebody who's trying to get over a bad breakup, you don't need to know how the governments maintain fiscal spending power. Like, doesn't matter unless you want it to, and then you change other parts of your stories to make that relevant.
And because Clarke is touching on a theme that's kind of reoccurred in a couple of our episodes, I'll even add to the fact that like even the stuff you do come up with, right? So the things that you think will touch on pieces of your storyline, things like that, do not have to always make it into the book either. Not everything you come up with has to be written into your story. So if it feels like you're getting bogged down too much in the details, right? Like maybe you've gotten into the world builder syndrome where you're just building out too much, but you might also be adding too much of what you did need, because the only thing that needs to make sense is that for you have the way it's built and you have those nodes and what it affects, but you only need to bring up those effects when they're relevant.
Sidebar, pro tip. If you find yourself like writing something or creating something that you think is super, super cool and you want to like shoehorn it into your narrative and it doesn't work, file it, write a short story. Like write a short story that takes place in that universe that's a different character, a different storyline, and say, this is my super awesome magic thing. And you can write a whole story tailored to that. Don't get rid of it, but don't try to force it into a story where it's just like an overload of,
or
unnecessary.
a spin-off series.
Right.
Yeah, spin-off series.
Or find a way to make it matter. But if you have a bunch of things that matter, you're going to end up with a very long and complicated book, at which point you're going to have to slim down on how much you want to matter in that one story.
Well, or then you end up with a book that's
books.
an encyclopedia sometimes. When you dig too much into it, I have read fantasy novels like this where I'm all about the giant ones that like require me to learn a lot. I'm okay with those. Some people don't like them. But even I have had some where I'm like, okay, if I have to look up the definitions of all of the words of your magic every 10 seconds to remember what's going on, you lost me, you know?
Right.
I think Tolkien kind of did it well, where all of the extra stuff is like in the appendices, and then eventually you end up with like the Silmarillion. But
yeah, then nerds like me can go read it and say, hey, you get credit for trying.
But the main series wasn't bogged down, so.
Yeah.
And there is a whole art to being able to present new information in such a way that people can pick up on it from context. And if you can do that, it doesn't matter how many new words and stuff you create, because if you're able to do it right, you're able to get them to understand and see what's happening, even if they don't know what the exact word is. Like that's what tech speak is. It's not that if I have a conversation with you about a computer, you don't necessarily need to know what a CPU is. You will piece together over time that I'm talking about a part of the computer, possibly a core part of the computer. The problem is if I then start overloading you with terms of the CPU and the RAM and dealing with the graphics and the frames per second and making sure you have the scripts running. Like, if you start stacking too much on top of it, it's impossible to build the context for people to read between the lines and understand what these things are. Mm-hmm. That was tangent. Sorry.
No,
that's great.
That's actually a good.
This is why you're here.
No, the one thing that I was going to kind of throw back to you a little bit, because we were talking about where do we start kind of thing, and we talked about how does magic affect the world, but a little bit too. Can you talk to the implications of the world that you may have built? You know, whether you're playing in urban fantasy with regular Earth or kind of an alt Earth. Or making up an entirely different world, and how the things you have affect. You kind of hinted at it a little bit, right, with the governments controlling magic, but can you talk a little bit more to, you know, like, is that considered a basic kind of starting point? It was, how does food and agriculture affect magic? How does geography affect the use of magic?
Or vice versa.
So this is one of those things that in my brain, I sit here and I'm like, okay, it's real simple. And then as I start talking through it, I think it may just be simple because I have tons and tons of practice at it because of where I come from. Because in my mind, where a lot of this starts and how it works is you pick what you want and then you build reasons to make that the reality. So if you want a fantasy world that has like magical creatures, you have magical creatures. If you want them to be in a stable, peaceful kingdom, you need to figure out, again, you don't need to go into all of the details, but you need to have a basic understanding. That means they have things under wraps in such a way that there is peace. How'd they do that? Like maintaining steady supply of food, managing the market, dealing with their enemies, making sure they're not going to war, managing poverty and drug issues and that kind of stuff. Like those are, if it's a peaceful time without major problems, there's a bunch that's going to go into keeping that stable. If you want a place that is war torn, then you get to start playing around with like, how is it war torn? Like what kind of war was it? What was the war about? Was it a civil war? Was it an invasion? Was it a foreign soil war where we have lost the majority of our population going out to manage logistics and invasion of this other place, and we're left with the shadow of our people? Like, it's figuring out
premise.
It's figuring out the thing that you want and then putting the pieces in play that make it make sense, and the magic can be a part of that. If you want somewhere where there is a secret cabal that is controlling everything, you could either make it so that they are doing it magically, or maybe it is just politically and they have to do it that way in secret because the mages hold the power, and the only way for normal people to actually influence things on a higher level is through political cabals. Like, you have so much stuff to play with. to me, it's really about figuring out the pieces that you want and then finding out how they make sense.
Well, and in some ways, it's such a general question. So,
yeah, is there any way that, I guess, would you warn people against being too jarring? Right, like if you're going with a war-torn world, can your magic, like, is your magic going to be nice and peaceful, kind of thing, or vice versa? Right, if you have a very peaceful kingdom, everything's stable. Can a magic system exist that is very destructive?
Absolutely. We can make anything work. That's why a lot of these questions are so hard to answer. And all of it comes back to finding explanations for it to make sense. And the tricky part of that is to honestly stop thinking like a creator and start thinking as a person, as a human, not I am designing this and I think this is super cool and I want it to work this way. But if I were in this situation, if my family was in this situation, what kinds of stuff would drive us in these different directions? What kinds of things would we want when this is going on? And digging into that is how you make some of it make sense. Because, for example, with that, if you have a place that is kind of war-torn and the magic is super violent and powerful, well, a couple of options is, like some of the things that leap to mind, how are, in a place that is in turmoil and isn't safe, how is violent magic going to be used? Primary things that jump to my mind are going to be soldiers, criminals, and there's a word, opportunists.
I was going to say your police force too, your judicial services, maybe.
Yeah, I would
depending on the government.
With soldiers. Yeah, enforcement.
Okay.
We'll go with enforcement of both military might and social might. So that's where most of them are going to be directed, because when you have it in this place where violence is everywhere, just because of your capability, you're going to be pulled in quickly. It would be kind of like if we were born. Imagine if we were born having a deep understanding of a specific subject. Like, you're just born that way. You're born, you know a lot about planes, and you know a lot about flying, or you know a lot about the human body and surgery, or you know a lot about chemical engineering. The second people understand what your knowledge base is, you're going to get pulled into that world whether you want to be or not. And it's kind of the same thing with violence. You could go the other route, though, where maybe you are in a very violent place and the magic is incredibly peaceful and seems harmless, and that's a point of intense frustration for your characters. It's like, I have this power, but it doesn't actually give me the power to do what I need to do right now.
I was thinking, though, what would be really, really easy, or what would really enable a country to go to war, or for a society to be really, really violent, is if you had a magic system that was very good at healing or preventing pain. So a very, very kind of peaceful system. Mm-hmm. So we can go wreck things because we have the ability to, to heal our guys to fix it afterwards.
And resurrection. What was that?
I said all I can think of it now is Mr. Meeseeks.
I was thinking more of Altered Carbon.
Also true.
Where, like,
I haven't seen that one in a long time.
Oh, the first season's so good. But, they get to the point where organic damage, like causing bodily harm, is a minor offense. Like, you can go in, you can beat the hell out of somebody, you can cut them up, you can shoot them, and it's a minor offense because they can just be uploaded into a new body.
It's whatever.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's like that's the fun part, is saying, I want this and I want this. How can I make that work? I want a lot of healing magic, but I want a completely war-torn, hyper-violent setting. How do I make that work? Well, I mean, just what Haley said. If the healing is prevalent enough and powerful enough, then things will get really brutal really fast, just because people will survive it. I mean, that's kind of why humans get in more fights than animals, is with medicine and other stuff. We're better able to recover from injuries day to day. Because if you look at animal attacks, they're in, they're out, and small injuries decide to fight and they leave. Whereas like a lot of our stories, the person is bloody and broken before the fight is over.
I would say that there's a little bit of like intelligence of understanding how much injury you can take before you've lost the fight. And a lot of people who get in fights don't always understand when they've lost.
Yes, there is that.
Animals are much more natural at understanding. Yeah, no, I've lost this one, I'm out.
Mm-hmm. So again, very long, rambling answer, but does that kind of answer your question you were getting at?
No, that was...
I really like finding the ways that work for fairly universally, but that does make it hard to like give any specific advice, which is part of why I really like the one-on-one coaching, is so I can get into what you have, what you want. We find a way to make your thing work.
Welcome to the end of yet another episode of Worlds Asunder. Talking to Clark's always a joy. We get to learn a few more things about magic systems, and now maybe you've seen some of the inside jokes we've been making since they were very video-oriented, and the previous version of Clark's interview didn't get posted with video. So, hope you enjoyed that little throwback. Don't you worry, we'll do these 2 episodes of Clark, and then we'll come back in with some new stuff. As always, thanks for stopping by, and make sure to check the show notes for where you can find all of our guests and ourselves. Follow us on any of our socials if you want more. Next week, we'll be delving into Do You Believe in Magic? Part 2 with Clark Rowenson returning. Should be a banger. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe wherever you listen to Worlds Asunder podcasts. And, as always, thanks for helping us tear the worlds asunder. We'll see you next time.